allow me to take this opportunity to express my support for the right of the people to keep and bear arms, as found in the Second Amendment of the Constitution, which states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Notice the language. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It does not say Congress shall not infringe on this right. It does not say the states shall not infringe on this right. It simply says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This means that the local, state, or national government, and indeed even private enterprise, cannot infringe on this original God-given right. To explain my position, it's very simple. I believe in passing national legislation that will repeal all regulations and restrictions on the ownership of all types of firearms. Full stop. Okay? Some may question that and say, well, are you saying that convicts should be allowed to purchase and carry firearms? The answer to that is if somebody cannot be trusted to carry firearms after they've committed a crime, should they even be trusted to be released from prison? I'm going to read some quotes from the Founding Fathers and use it to further explain my position. So we'll start with Joseph Story. Joseph Story says this: "The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary power of rulers, and will enable the people to triumph over them. There is certainly no small danger that indifference may lead to disgust, and disgust to contempt, and thus gradually undermining all the protection intended by this clause of our National Bill of Rights." So we already see that today. We see that there are people that are indifferent to firearms, that indifference grows into disgust and ultimately contempt. And using that contempt, they tried to restrict firearms. I actually favor teaching firearms in every school in America. That used to happen, used to be a normal thing. Now, as a member of Congress, I wouldn't be able to pass legislation demanding that, but I do think every state should adopt that within their education system. Next quote is from George Mason, the father of the Bill of Rights. He said this: 40 years ago, when the resolution of enslaving America was formed in Great Britain, the British Parliament was advised to disarm the people, that it was the best and most effectual way to enslave them, but that they should not do it openly, but to weaken them and let them sink gradually. So this is the idea that the best way to enslave a people is to disarm them. Dictators all over history have done that, all over the world. Okay? But also, it's how the enemies of the right to bear arms have worked to gradually, over time, whittle away at that right to self-preservation. Okay? More recently, they've been more open about it. I mean, Cory Booker straight up said, yeah, he wants to take all of our guns. Not only Cory Booker, but Beto O'Rourke was the famous one that said, hell yes, I want to take your AR-15. Okay? Samuel Adams said this: "The Constitution should never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms." James Madison said this: "The advantage of being armed is an advantage which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation. In the several kingdoms of Europe, the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms." Thomas Jefferson said this: "No citizen shall be debarred the use of arms within his own lands." John Adams had this to say: "Resistance to sudden violence for the preservation not only of my person, my limbs, and my life, but of my property is an indisputable right of nature, which I never surrendered to the public by the compact of society, and which, perhaps, I could not surrender if I would. The maxims of the law and the precepts of Christianity are precisely coincident in relation to this subject. Alexander Hamilton said this: "The Supreme Being gave existence to man, together with the means of preserving that existence. He invested man with an inviolable right to personal liberty and personal safety." The final quote that I've got for you is from James Wilson, who said this: "The great natural law of self-preservation cannot be repealed or superseded or suspended by any human institution. The right of the citizen to bear arms in the defense of themselves shall not be questioned." Period. Not even questioned. Okay? Every man's house is deemed by the law to be his castle, and the law invests him with the power and places on him the duty of the commanding officer of his house. Every man's house is his castle, and if anyone be robbed in it, it shall be esteemed his own default and negligence. Okay, so we are responsible for our own protection. Okay, the right of the people to keep and bear arms for their self-defense shall not even be questioned, according to James Wilson, who, by the way, was considered the most educated man in the law in the Constitutional Convention. Okay, so to clarify once more, I support national legislation that will remove every restriction to ownership of firearms, and I support legislation that will restrict the courts from ever trying to undermine that right, or from repealing the very law that I propose passing. Thank you for listening. As you can see, I'm a very strong proponent of the Second Amendment. Thank you for your time.